A warm welcome to Aviation this week on Channels Television. I'm Bukola Joe Oketumbi. Technology usually fosters advantage in human connectivity and machine-to-machine connectivity as well. But recently, the deployment of 5G, especially in the United States, got into some kind of flux that really made people begin to have a second look at that technology. But the Federal Aviation Administration says precise data from wireless operators has been used to determine that it's possible to safely and more precisely map the size and shape of the areas around airports where 5G signals are mitigated, shrinking the areas where wireless operators are deferring their antenna activations. Here in Nigeria, 5G is not an issue yet. Plus, the Nigerian Civil Aviation Authority says there are no planes operating automated landing in Nigeria. This issue is the subject of our discussion. Plus, the Civil Aviation Bill seeking to repeal the Act of 2006 has been passed by the Senate. Let's get on board and take to the skies.
In many ways, a modern airport operates like a city, with a governing body providing strategic direction and overseeing day-to-day management. In addition to those activities, airports must also provide the resources necessary to care for a fleet of commercial aircraft. Airlines need space for airplanes, facilities for routine maintenance, and jet fuel. Operations in airports also come with their own challenges. And an example is the disruption to US-bound air travel caused by the rollout of 5G services in the United States on January the 19th. Airlines and telecom companies have been at loggerheads over the deployment of 5G mobile services over concerns that the powerful signals could interfere with airplane systems. The Airport Council International warned that the effect of decisions on passengers and flights could be felt for weeks.
Based on currently available information, the resolution of these 5G issues sounds like it will be lengthy and gradual, taking place over weeks and months. In the meantime, passengers and shippers should expect delays and disruptions until the issues are fully resolved.
The 5G technology needs concentrated base station rollout to achieve its monster speed and beauty. Airlines are expressing the fear that with such concentration of service deployment close to the runway in some airports, planes with high-end modern avionics, especially those equipped with radio altimeters, which pilots find very useful during landing and takeoff in bad weather conditions, could face some challenges.
The frequency band that 5G uses is very similar to the frequency band that radar altimeters use. And there's possibility that there's interference or false signals with the 5G and a radar altimeter. So you can, what you would rely on with the radar altimeter giving you a certain altitude above the ground, it may be erroneous based on interference with 5G telephone frequency.
For the United States, it seeks to reach a solution on 5G deployment that protects air safety. At the moment, the FAA has now determined that 20 types of radio altimeters are safe and reliable in 5G environments and has thus approved 90% of commercial aircraft for takeoffs and landings in low visibility at most of the nation's airports. But there still could be significant flight delays, diversions and cancellations at some airports, as the FAA have still not verified that certain planes would be free of 5G interference when taking off and landing in bad weather. Here in Nigeria, there are almost no concerns, but a pilot explains how important it is for this battle to be won globally.
When the cellular phone started, up to now, some countries don't allow cellular phone usage on board the aircraft because of the interference of the frequencies. And it's true. There's sometimes you have communication interference, sometimes navigational interference, because as we advance in technology, the frequency bands of cellular network system is getting closer to the frequency bands that is used on board the aircraft. And as you're getting closer to the frequency bands, then there is bound to be interference. And if there is any interference, no matter how remote it is, the resultant is devastating. It's usually very catastrophic. So we usually, in aviation, we usually don't want to have any, I would say, any form of interference with the frequencies on board the aircraft.
Away from the 5G rollout to an audit of the country's aviation sector. This time, the International Civil Aviation Organization's Universal Safety Oversight and Audit Program, Continuous Monitoring Approach CMA, will be assessing and reviewing the effective implementation of the critical elements of a safety oversight system. It will also verify the status of its compliance with the provisions of ICAO Convention in the first quarter of 2022. Still in country, a review of the country's Aviation Act, which may give room for some critical changes in the sector.
The Director General of the Nigerian Civil Aviation Authority, Captain Musa Nuhu, is our guest, and he starts by explaining why the deployment of 5G in Nigeria may not pose any harm to the industry.
The spectrum, the frequency of the 5G is pretty close to the aeronautical spectrum. So there are serious concerns that spurious emissions from the 5G will affect this radio altimeter. And now what the radio altimeter is an equipment in the cockpit of the aircraft that shows the absolute altitude of the aircraft from the ground from 2,500 feet and below. And that's when you're getting into the approach to land phase of the flight. So the effect of this 5G on the radio altimeter is of concern during auto landings, when the aircraft is going to do automated landing. And for us in Nigeria, we do not have aircraft doing automated landing. So for now, it's not a big factor for us in Nigeria, but it's concerned. We keep watching new developments. Many countries have put in measures to mitigate this, where they have the auto landing. Like I believe in Canada, they restricted it to 5G deployment close to airports, where it will possibly suspected might have effect on the aircraft equipment during the approach landing. So also in the States. So for now in Nigeria, it's not of a concern for us, but we'll keep an eye on development to see how things develop. So if we need to take the necessary steps in Nigeria, we'll do that. The House had already previously passed this Civil Aviation Act, and the whole purpose of reviewing the Civil Aviation Act, there are new development, new annexes, new developments in the industry, such as issues of RPAS and all that we need to capture. In addition to that, there was a flaw that was detected in the acts where the service providers, such as FAN, NAMA, and NIMED, had some regulatory functions, which is contrary to ICAO SAPS. So all these regulatory functions were taken from the service providers and made resident in the NCA Civil Aviation Act. So NCA will have all the regulatory functions and no service provider will have any. So those are the main changes that we see in the Civil Aviation Act. I just said we are going to review our fee schedules, not only the AOC, because these fees were fixed over 20 years ago. And you can imagine the difference in the value of the money and the requirement to process this fee. AOC fee in Nigeria is 200,000 naira. That's less than $400. It's not even sufficient to be anything. According to ICAO, I think document 9374, the regulatory body is supposed to be a competitive employer. And what that means, our staff inspectors should earn something very close to what the industry pay, the industry we oversight. that we should have look at the qualification, the experience, and be a competitive employer. As regards, NCA is a public service organization. We have to comply with the public service regulations. We have the scheme of service. We have the salaries and wages commission that are approved. So we just have to comply with those because we're public service rules, we are not holder. And that's one of the concerns of the AUN. They saw the limitation of how much staff can be given for them to remain with the organization. I can guarantee you Nigeria has one of the most poorly paid inspectors in Africa, very poor. We've started getting comparative results from 1 or 2 countries, and they pay 5 to 6 times more than what we pay our inspectors. So it's going to be very difficult for somebody who's working in the airline making a couple of million to come and less than $1 million and maybe about $1,000 because you want to work with the regulatory body. So that's why we have issues.
Bilateral air service agreements are treaties signed between countries to allow international commercial air transport services between them. These agreements provide the framework under which identified airlines from the 2 countries fly into designated ports in each other's country. The bilateral system has its basis under the Chicago Convention and associated multilateral treaties.
Actually, the principle of BASA is based on reciprocity. And this is one area that everybody who is involved in BASA negotiation must pay attention to. What is BASA agreement in terms of reciprocity? If you want to come into my country, I give you 2 slots. If I want to come into your country, you give me 2 slots. That is reciprocity. Every region, they have their own standards. American standard is there, the European standard is there. Their own standard could be the type of aircraft you need to use, how many aircraft you have in your fleet before you start operations.
BASAs are negotiated based on 9 freedoms of the air, which include the privilege to fly across a state's territory without landing, the privilege to land for non-traffic purposes, for example, for refueling, repairs, and maintenance, the privilege of an airline from one country to carry traffic from its own country to another country, the privilege of an airline from one country to carry traffic from another country to its own country, and the privilege of an airline from one country to carry traffic between 2 other countries, providing that the flight originates and terminates in its own country. As of 2016, Nigeria retained its attractiveness with 90 of these agreements, although most remain lopsided.
The big airlines we have today were encouraged by their government, they were sponsored or financed by their government, and they are in the state they are today because they had the government backings. They had the backings from the states. Here, if we expect Nigerian airlines to grow, you must protect the market, Nigerian market. If you expect the airlines in Nigeria to grow, you must encourage them and give them what it takes.
While many countries across the world still maintain these agreements, the COVID-19 pandemic appears to be changing the status quo.
Aviation This Week will return with News Flash shortly. Do join us again. Domestic carrier Air Peace has stated that it will never compromise on safety in all its operations. This assurance is coming following a publication in the social media whereby the airline was labeled a vicious operator. According to the airline, no carrier under the sun benefits from flight delays or cancellations. Flight delays emanate principally from safety considerations more than anything else. In a statement, The carrier said, "We wish to reiterate our resolve to zero tolerance to unsafe operations. Air Peace will never succumb to deliberate negative commentaries, intimidation or blackmail to fly when it is unsafe to do so, and neither shall we, out of fear of negative publicity from anyone or quarter, take to the skies in order to look good when it's absolutely unsafe to do so." Debunking the allegation, the airline in the statement also apologized to all passengers affected. The Accident Investigation Bureau says it's set to launch its world-class training facility for manpower development and is rekindling its partnership with the Nigerian College of Aviation Technology, Zaria, in the area of capacity development and other aviation industry projects. The Chief Executive Officer of AIB said the essence of the facility is to deepen training as the investigation agency prioritizes manpower development in its scope of influence. The Federal Airport Authority of Nigeria is expanding the Zulu wing of the General Aviation Terminal in Lagos. The wing houses most of the operations of domestic carrier Air Peace. According to the Airport Authority, the expansion project will only hamper passenger facilitation minimally at the terminal, but it's all part of efforts to improve on infrastructure and service delivery. Over 1,000 U.S. flights were cancelled after the nation's northeast states were walloped by a deadly winter storm that prompted several states to declare emergencies, leading to the cancellation of those flights. Nearly 2,000 passengers faced delays, according to flight tracking website FlightAware, mostly at LaGuardia Airport in New York City and Boston Logan International. Finally, Indonesia and Singapore have signed a bilateral extradition agreement, a move that Jakarta expects to help authorities in their effort to bring to justice people accused of stashing offshore billions of dollars in state money. Senior cabinet ministers from both countries also signed bilateral agreements covering airspace and defense. The signings followed a meeting between Indonesian President Joko Widodo and Singapore's Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong on the Indonesian island of Bintan as part of their annual leaders' retreat.
Our two sides have reached agreement on these long-standing bilateral matters. When implemented, the FIR agreement will meet the civil aviation needs of both countries and uphold the safety and efficiency of air traffic in a manner consistent with ICAO rules. The Defense Cooperation Agreement will strengthen cooperation between our armed forces and advance our defense relations. The extradition treaty will enhance cooperation in combating crime and send a clear, positive signal to investors.
Governor Willie Obiano and his team at the Anambra International Passenger and Cargo Airport, Umueri, to receive the first set of passengers arriving with a large aircraft. This is coming after the approval of the Nigerian Civil Aviation Authority, NCAA, for the airport to operate the Boeing 737-700 aircraft or its equivalent. Expectations are high as they look forward to the arrival. The 124-passenger capacity aircraft lands and makes its way to the apron. Governor Obiano receives the pilot and the passengers. Commended the governor for the feat. The pilot attests to the quality of the facilities at the airport.
Coming in, we tested the ILS. The ILS it works very well, and the runway is smooth, very long. We had the approach light, we had runway lighting as well. Congratulations, Your Excellency. This is a very safe runway, second longest in Nigeria.
For Governor Obiano, it's indeed a remarkable day.
This is a great day, and that's why I came personally to welcome the first set of passengers that landed on this aircraft using a bigger plane.
The traditional ruler of the host community is delighted over this development.
We cannot thank His Excellency the Governor enough for the developmental projects he cited in Umueri. not only the airport, but some other projects. We cannot thank you enough.
As the gathering is documented with photographs, another large aircraft is expected to land, and the state government says 2 airlines have since begun operation at the airport, while many more are on the verge of commencement. He's taken advantage of an opportunity presented by aircraft retirement. Retired aircraft line this tarmac, waiting to be dismantled. Various workers move air ramp across the tarmac. As COVID-19 grounds a large number of airline fleet, accelerated plane retirements is somewhat creating a room for profits for companies that thrive on dismantling and trade of aircraft parts.
This is an Airbus 310 that we started the harvesting of parts and the decontamination of this specific aircraft.
Canada's Aerocycle is bidding to buy grounded planes for the first time to dismantle and resell for parts, instead of just recycling.
Behind there are bags, and what we're doing that's kind of special, that's why we just started doing it. The insulation that you see here in the walls, we've given this to a company in Quebec that manufactures electric buses, and they want to reuse the insulation bags for their buses. So we're trying that out right now.
While companies involved in the trade see opportunities in parked planes, a sudden increase in the supply of used parts risks depressing prices in the estimated $3 billion a year industry. With aviation remaining in a slump because of the pandemic, the fate of the world's pool of grounded planes is being closely watched by players in the market for used serviceable materials.
They're going to have to make certain financial decisions and cut their losses. Try and maximize the value of getting a certain value for the aircraft now versus next year. No one knows what the actual market, how the market predictions are going to be, right? If certain aircrafts are available now and they're priced right, that's where we're going to make the move to possibly purchase them.
The number of planes dismantled for parts or scrap could double to 1,000 annually through 2023. That's up from roughly 400 to 500 planes a year since 2016.
I think companies like ourselves are going to take certain precautions on harvesting parts off different types of airplanes to make sure that we're investing our money on removing parts that are in high demand. There's no rush for us to harvest parts off an aircraft. It could take a bit longer to make sure that our return on investment is a low risk. And if we need a part within 48 hours, we can get a part removed and AOG or shipped to whoever's requesting that part, right? So for us, it's more about being cautious on how we're harvesting parts off which aircraft. Versus before, it was a bit more open, so we would harvest more parts and keep them in inventory. Now, we're just going to, make sure we measure our risks on removing what parts off what aircraft.
Airplane recycling pertains to the process of harvesting parts and materials from end-of-life aircraft. As the airline industry looks to become more eco-friendly as well as to cut costs, one area of increasing interest is that of aircraft recycling. With 12,000 aircraft scheduled to be decommissioned over the next 2 decades, recycling will play a larger role.
This is our final destination on the program. It's bye for now. I'm Bukola Joe Oketumbi.